Hi, welcome to Coaching Business and this episode about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So there is basically a, let's say, eternal war going on between people who support the intrinsic motivation approach and people who support the extrinsic motivation approach. In modern times, intrinsic motivation becomes more popular, so increasing intrinsic motivation, and extrinsic motivation is becoming more and more unpopular as it is combined with rewards and punishment, especially. So the question is whether how both of the concept interact and how we can introduce a comprehensive program of increasing intrinsic and extrinsic motivation if both have some powers to do good. Basically, the question is the first question to answer is what is driving me to get out of bed in the morning. Me as a psychologist as well as me as a coach, I do understand and I do stand 100% behind increasing and developing programs for increasing intrinsic motivation. So I know that intrinsic motivation is the way to go. I know that rewards and punishments are not always the best way to go. So I am pretty much aware of the power of intrinsic motivation. What is intrinsic motivation? It means that I am responsible. I want to get out of bed because it's me, because I know that it is good for me. And I know that I want it. It's motivated by internal satisfaction. So the satisfaction is located inside of me. This is a very, very important point. The motivation to do something is located inside of me. And the action itself is the reason to do it. So I do not need somebody to provide me incentives in order to get out of bed. I just want to get out of bed. Let's talk about some examples. Let's talk about my favorite example, which is me as a kid playing soccer. I just love to play soccer. Whenever somebody called me and asked me whether I want to play soccer, I played soccer. I played soccer in my bed. I played soccer at home. I played soccer with my dog. I played soccer every single day whenever I was able to play soccer, wherever I found the ball. So for me, this means that playing soccer, I was intrinsically motivated to play soccer every day. When improving myself, this is kind of playing soccer of my adult life. So I just want to improve myself. I just want to become better, to not waste my life. Therefore, it's kind of an intrinsic motivation for me to get better, to do things which develop me further. Spending time with my family is another thing which I am very intrinsically motivated for. So I love to have time for my family. I love to see to feel the warmth of my family when being around with them. So I have a strong feeling towards them. What's the other side? What's extrinsic motivation? Extrinsic motivation basically means that I know that I will get some rewards based on my behavior, and therefore I will only get out of bed if I get such rewards. If I can be pretty sure that I will get the rewards. And basically, in comparison to intrinsic motivation, when dealing with extrinsic motivation, the motivation itself is placed outside of me. So it's not inside of me. I'm not motivated because I love to do it inside of me, but because somebody else wants me to do it or gives me incentives to do it. Let's get back to the playing soccer example. Basically, I love playing soccer, but sometimes when I saw people as a child and saw people looking at how I played, I love to trick around, to provide some street style soccer. This meant that for me that I knew that people were looking at me. I knew that people were clapping. I knew that people were surprised by my skills, positively surprised by my skills. So my extrinsic motivation was to make them wonder how good I am. Improving my skills Of course, I just want to improve myself, but at the end, I hope to earn my living by doing what I love to do, by improving myself. So I hope that I can improve myself, and by improving myself, I will earn money. So I hope that there will be some extrinsic motivators that will keep me going with my passions. And when it comes to spending time with my family, I provide the example of my granny. Every time I call my granny, every time I'm at my granny's, every time I buy her something, I cuddle her, I kiss her. Well, I know that at some point she will tell other family members that I'm her favorite grandchild. So therefore I do it because I love my granny, but at some point I'm extrinsically motivated because I like it to listen to her when she says that I'm the favorite grandchild. So you see that that you can be intrinsically and extrinsically motivated. You now know that intrinsic motivation is more an inner thing. You now know that extrinsic motivation is placed somewhere outside of you. Next question would be, what if I was only motivated by external motivation? Well, this would mean that I was not able to move at all, if not moved by somebody else. So I was not able to stand up, to get out of bed, if not motivated by some potential reward. What if I was only motivated by intrinsic motivation? Well, this would mean that I would only move if the thing which I wanted to do was important for me and not important for others. This would mean that there would be potentially some issues with, for example, empathy. Would empathy be a mechanism which would help me to do good things for others? Well, and what if introducing external incentives would lead to a crush of internal or intrinsic motivation? So what if introducing reward systems would lead to the reward system crushing your intrinsic, your inner motivation? Well, basically, this is what scientists try to take a look at, whether intrinsic and extrinsic motivation is able to interact and to exist next to each other. Well, there is a theory which is called cognitive evaluation theory, which is called CET. Within cognitive evaluation theory, the hypothesis is that intrinsic motivation is naturally given. So you do have intrinsic motivation, as it is necessary for you to live, basically. The question then is, what role plays external or extrinsic motivation? Well, it is necessary for the intrinsic motivation to thrive. So external circumstances are necessary for the intrinsic motivation to thrive. With rewards, for example, as extrinsic motivation, having negative impact on intrinsic motivation in situations where rewards, for example, have a controlling effect. Controlling means that rewards are only provided when tasks are conducted in a very specific way, in a very specific order. So rewards are there to control what you do and to control what results you get out of it. At the same time, results might have good influence on intrinsic motivation when things are received as information or educational, or having an educational purpose. So this means that rewards would increase intrinsic motivation in situations where the reward itself is provided as a kind of educational, informational mechanism which should help to develop further, and not which should help to control the way you do things. Based on this CET, so the cognitive evaluation theory, scientists have made some meta-analysis. One of them has shown that rewards do have negative impact when produced conditionally. So this means always under the exact same condition, always to provide the information that the task was fulfilled properly because it was conducted in a very specific way. So the first meta-analysis confirmed the hypothesis that if provided conditionally, if provided as a controlling mechanism, rewards might have negative impact on intrinsic motivation. On the other hand, rewards do not have negative impact when produced unconditionally. So, for example, when they have an information effect. So, extrinsic motivation does not have negative impact in such cases. The second meta-analysis showed that intrinsic performance impacts performance. So, if you do something out of your own inner will to do it because you like to do it, this will impact your performance. So intrinsic motivation impacts the overall performance. Intrinsic motivation, further going, is stronger in qualitative tasks compared to quantitative tasks. So with qualitative tasks, intrinsic motivation helps to conduct them to perform better within such tasks. When having quantitative tasks, so when repeating stuff again and again, intrinsic motivation is not as strong as in the other case. Well, the impact of intrinsic motivation does increase if extrinsic rewards are placed in between and unconditionally. So extrinsic motivation does not only impact it or do not impact it. It helps in increasing intrinsic motivation and therefore performance, if provided introduced in between tasks and unconditionally. On the other hand, intrinsic motivation had impact or highest impact on qualitative tasks. On the other hand, extrinsic motivation has a higher impact on quantitative tasks. So this means that if we have to repeat some specific set of actions in order to solve our issue, and repeat it always in the same manner, then extrinsic motivation, for example rewards, will have higher impact. So what we do know is that intrinsic motivation has impact on performance, that it is lowered when extrinsic motivation is introduced in a conditional way as a controlling mechanism. We do know that intrinsic motivation is not decreased when extrinsic motivation is introduced in a informational way. We do know that intrinsic motivation does perform better within qualitative tasks, and extrinsic motivation does perform better in quantitative tasks. And we do know that extrinsic motivation can even increase intrinsic motivation when provided unconditionally in a non-controlling but informational educational manner. What does it mean for us? Basically, how to introduce extrinsic motivation mechanisms. Well, what you need to do is set up a group in order to figure out what the individual's intrinsic motivational factors are, and to figure out what the group's internal intrinsic motivational factors are. So what you have to do is basically same what you do in your business setting. You have to analyze the status quo when it comes to intrinsic motivation. So you have to understand what intrinsically motivated means for each and every employee, as well as for the group. You have to understand which kind of tasks you are working with. So are the tasks which are conducted by your team of quantitative nature or of qualitative nature? If of quantitative nature, then extrinsic motivators will be a very good way in order to maintain and increase intrinsic motivation. Time and place. So will the extrinsic motivation introduced, so possible rewards, for example, will they be presented conditionally or unconditionally? So this has to be decided. And you have to evaluate other external circumstances which might have impact on the intrinsic motivation. Basically, if you want to impact intrinsic motivation directly, what you have to do is to engage. So basically you have to set up an environment where the employee or where your colleague is able to engage in a way which is autonomous, in a way that is based on taking part in a decision-making process. So by increasing engagement, what you will do is you will increase satisfaction as well as intrinsic motivation to take part in the company's, for example, in the company's success. So what you have to plan up front before introducing such a program, you have to evaluate tasks which are in place. Again, if they are quantitative, if they are qualitative, which tasks have to be conducted. You have to identify internal motivators within the teams. You have to identify potential moments of external motivators. Again, if placed and presented conditionally, always at the same point in time, always at the same point as a consequence of well-fulfilled procedures, then it might have negative impact on intrinsic task motivation, because then the person will get used to the reward being presented always at the same point and will not perform if not presented with a reward. What you have to do is to identify potential platforms for displaying extrinsic motivation. So are you going to present the extrinsic motivators directly to the employee? Are you going to use some public platform? Are you going to present extrinsic rewards, extrinsic motivation via a HR employee, or will it be yourself? So there are many questions to consider when introducing such a program. At the end, what you have to do is to rely on extrinsic rewards, which you will probably introduce, like salary raises or bonuses, with motivators which have an intrinsic nature. So what you want to do is to not crush intrinsic motivation. Therefore, extrinsic motivators should be aligned with such. So if you see that, for example, the employee is engaged within the company's success, within the company's procedures, and is engaged because he or she is intrinsically motivated to take part in the success of a company, then presenting or providing raises every half a year or every 3 months might not be the best idea. Then providing the possibility to grow, then providing the possibility to engage even more, then providing the possibility to share engagement with others might be a good idea to increase intrinsic motivation. Of course, at some points, as a general monetary feedback, raise increases might be a good idea. I hope to have provided you some insights on how extrinsic and intrinsic motivation interact with each other. I hope that such insights will help you with deciding how to deal with extrinsic and intrinsic motivation and how they impact, how you can set up a mechanism in your company to get things done in a better way, to increase the performance of your teams, to increase the performance of your company. If you need help in introducing external or intrinsic motivation mechanisms, a coach might always help. So please contact me via my website. There is a possibility to contact me. If you need, for example, help to evaluate extrinsic or intrinsic motivators which have impact on your employees or which are impacting your employees' behavior, then a coach might be a good idea. So please contact me. Furthermore, please just comment, like, share my content wherever you find it, especially on my social media channels. Thank you very much for listening. I wish you the best day and a smile every day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.